Hello snowboarders of the internet, I'm your host Avran LeFeber, and in this video we're going to be talking about how trash do your boots get after a 150-day season. That's right, I had a 150-day season. I went through 2 pairs of boots and we're going to take an in-depth look at how trash they actually were by the end of the season. So the way that I run my boots typically through an average season is I start off with my older pair from the previous season, and I do this for 15, 20-ish days, give or take, just to kind of ease myself into the season. That way I've got the familiarity of the boot, I know what's going on, I don't have to worry about it. So I started off with the red and black Thraxis, and then around Thanksgiving I switched over to the all black Thraxis over here, and all I did was pull the liners from the red Thraxis and put them into the black one. That way it expedites the break-in process. This is a really easy way, especially if you're just running the same boot year over year, to break it in and not have to worry about any issues. So I did that. Now near the end of the season, I actually had a catastrophic boa failure with my boot. I actually obliterated the lace guide on the outside, so it just completely ripped right through, obliterated the knob, and when I went to replace it, I realized I was like, there's no hope for this, so I had to jump back actually into these boots just to finish out the season. So these ended up with about 100 days on them for the 2021-2022 season, and I used these for about 50 days, give or take, for the season. But each one of them worked for what they were. I expect to never get more than maybe 100 days max out of my boots, just because of how much I ride and how much pressure I put into them. The average lifespan for a boot is about 60 to 80 days for the average consumer, but if you figure that they only go 5 days a year, they're gonna have them for multiple years. I'm out there Monday through Friday from pretty much October to the end of May. It's just a given that I'm gonna go through boots. So I try to buy a more expensive boot that's a little stiffer, a little more supportive. That's why I ride the K2 Thraxis. Now with that said, let's dive into what's actually broken on these, what wore down, and kind of go from there. For insoles, I run Ramines. I love them. They've been the best that I've ever used in 25 years of snowboarding. I actually put new ones into the boot this year in the old liner, and I typically rotate these about every 2 years, so I'm going to be able to get another season out of these footbeds. But if you look, there's no real breakdown in the heel pad underneath. They work, they last. I've been having a good time with them. These fit my arch shape, they work well, they contour well. Are they for everyone? No, but for me, they absolutely work. Normally these things, when they clap out, the blue foam starts to deteriorate, the housing is cracked. This is completely flat, and you can actually really see where my toes have been pushing into it. One of the things I really like to do when I get new boots is pull and use the old liner from the previous boot. It helps break in the shell and everything, and if I can run that liner through the whole season, then I don't have to break it in. So I always end up having like extra liners laying around, which is nice because if I do need to do added customization, I've got a backup liner that I can play with if I screw something up. Just food for thought, that if you become one of those guys that runs your old liners in the new shell because you keep getting the same boot, it's great to keep them around. Just because even mid-season, if you're like, hey, shell's pretty good, but the liner's clapped out, you can throw that new liner in, and it's like breaking in a new boot, but the shell of it has broken in, so it's gonna create those same flex points and allow you to expedite that process and ride a little bit more smooth and without having to worry about breaking those boots in. On my right foot, I was getting a little pressure on my ankle bone. It was just causing some discomfort, so I ended up putting 2 pieces of foam in there just to kind of stop that internal guide from the boa conda from putting that pressure when I crank it down. This worked. I didn't have any problems. Obviously, this liner has probably close to 300 days on it because I used it the season before, then put it in the new boot. This was a simple, easy problem to rectify. Otherwise, if you look at the liner, it's got its normal wear marks, nothing too crazy going on there. You got your normal little creases and stuff back there, but otherwise, super solid. So one of the big things you're gonna notice is this wear mark right here and the destruction of the seam. I am a superior footed rider, aka goofy, So I do rest my board on my back foot, so it has torn up the material and then it caused the seam to pop. This is also a flex point from walking in it, so it does break in over time. This pretty much happens on all my boots. I mean, if you really want to see something that's super destructive, this is my old Thraxis, and like, as you can tell, I'm notorious for blowing these things apart, so it's not really that big of a deal to me. But with this, at 150 days on this boot, probably, maybe even more, this actually isn't too bad of a wear on it. And then I do have some minor wearing just from testing bindings. I get a crease point there. There's a little rubbing down there in the sole as well. And you notice that on the other side that I get a little in that. Otherwise, not too big of a deal. When it comes to the tread, there's some obvious wear in the toe area and right under the front of the foot. In the heel, it's not as prevalent. There's maybe just a hair of it. This Vibram sole is actually super solid. It lasts really well. I really actually enjoyed this. One thing that always happens to me with these boots is I end up jacking up the internal harness just because I have extra bones in my feet sticking out. Like my internavicular bone really sticks out. Most people don't have that issue. This puts pressure on the boa conda cable in there, so it ends up creating a crease point, so I can't loosen these as much. They still stay tight and lock my heel in, but at about 80 to 90 days, they're pretty much bear traps on my feet. 50 to 70, they're starting to go. This is just sort of something that I've noticed that happened. But on these ones, I didn't snap any of the boa knobs. These are all original. These still rock. I love it. I love boa. I've been riding boa for almost 20 years. I fully believe in it. Some people do, some people don't. To each their own is what I say. So these were the new Thraxises that I switched over to around Thanksgiving, that I blew the housing for the cable, and you can see that right here. I mean, I just ate through it. It's the first time that I've ever eaten through it like that on a boot. Normally I end up cracking them. Sometimes they don't fully work the way they're supposed to, but this was the first one that I've ever actually eaten through. And this is what's left of the cable. I mean, as you can tell, it kind of ate it, and then it ended up cutting into the housing on the front coiler. It obliterated it, basically. There was no hope of that coming back. Supposedly I could warranty these if I wanted to. I really don't give a shit. I bought 2 more pairs to replace it. I know some people are big anti-boa guys, but I think it's come a long way since generation 1 to whatever they're on right now. I notoriously break this stuff. I know how to repair it. I always expect to repair it. I expect to have 1 or 2 issues this season, but at 150 days, what isn't going to give you issues? Some people say, this is so typical. It's not. I mean, I've snapped boa knobs off by stepping down on a step and having to catch and pull it off, hitting a rock at Keystone, snapping cables. I've literally obliterated the center pin and had the whole knob come off. All different times, but almost every single one of them has made it to 80 days. At that point, I feel like the boot really doesn't owe me anything. This was actually far more durable than my previous pair. Like, I didn't eat any of that seam up. When it came to the tread, I had next to no real wear. That Vibram sole really works, or Vibram, however you want to pronounce it. These things stayed super grippy all season, and for getting about 100 days on them, give or take, it's pretty solid. You know, I had the normal binding wear back there. That's kind of a given. Little compression in the foam. All right, did you guys learn what to look for with gear that's getting trashed? I mean, hopefully that I'm the outlier and your stuff doesn't look like this. Hopefully you're getting more life out of your equipment than I am. But if it can break for me, it will. That's kind of how it goes. The whole point of this video is just so that you guys could know what to look for. Hopefully that helps you. Hopefully you're realizing where stuff is failing on your boots and what to look for. Anyways, if you're new here, remember to subscribe, click the bell, get those notifications. That way you're not going to miss any of the videos we got coming out for all you snowboarders of the internet. And if you really like what we're doing over here, do you want to support us further, do you want to keep me in actual good boots, swing on over to Angry Snowboarder VIP and become a member. Sure, I could tell you more here, but I got a video over there that explains it so much better. As always, I've been your host, Avran LeFeber, and well, I'm going to continue to be your host. And I do trash my gear, and I'll see you in another video.